All right, this is the Product Analytics PM UX Weekly Sync for October 25th, 2023. Looking back, action items from last week, I had an item to find and post back the issue of ideas for discussion that we had back in Q3 as we think about how to get more customer conversations in Q4. Some of these things were implemented, some of them haven't been implemented. So we can think about pulling some of these in towards our key result of having 10 customer conversations in Q4. Feedback step in dashboard creation, onboarding flow, visualization creation, we can create one there too. I think our best bet is going to be direct ask of known participants, but we need to drive more known participants to get to that point. I think we'll be okay on the internal side. I'm going to split that KR 5 internal conversations and 5 external conversations. I think it's the external one that's going to be the bigger lift. So,
I guess the only thing we could look at doing is like offering an opportunity for feedback after key actions. You're more likely to get engagement if someone's had I guess, more likely a negative reaction to an engagement they've had. Like they've just used the visualization designer or the dashboard designer once released. And on say we show a pop-up saying, would you like to provide any feedback or whatever? Not a pop-up, but a tooltip or toast.
Some sort of alert to the user.
Yeah. And then they're far more likely to actually click on it because they've just done it.
Yeah, I like that idea of doing it after a key action or they've done something, because we know that they're using it.
And they're engaged.
Yeah. Okay, let's keep pondering on that. And I guess what's the next step would be, let's add an agenda item for next week to talk more about, what we should implement in an upcoming milestone to try to drive some of that additional feedback out of the app.
Yeah, cool. I agree. We need to get that done, I guess, before beta or just after.
All right. I think that was the only action item from last week. Signing that task to myself. We don't have any prototypes or results of research to review this week from my side. Any mocks or anything to review from the UX side of this meeting?
I guess I don't know if Jan, you've been doing any UX related tasks. The only one I can think of that's been doing anything UX sort of is Elwin. I've not been too much involved in that though. But I think he's been doing mock-ups. If we wanted to take a look, I'd have to try and track down the issues.
Yeah, I got a ping from him this morning that I can share back. I'm just going to share my screen and then I'll stick it into the agenda. So I had done some cleanup on the issue around the epic description around the iterations. It looks like Elwin filled in the issues for those for the most part, and then is looking at a graph like this, like we have for pipelines today, showing the event processing over time as opposed to a just previous month, this month. So just showing the jumping straight to the full graph as the iteration there. So this isn't necessarily a mock of our stuff. It looks like a screenshot of compute, but taking that same type of graph and putting it in for the events process.
Okay, so that's for iteration 2 where we start grouping over a course of a longer period of time than just the current and previous months.
Yeah, that would be previous plus current billing periods to date, and then group usage over the year. I think the The TBD and what we might move out is that usage for last billing period or last month on the group usage page. Just take that out of iteration 1 and just show them, here's your current month to date of how many events have been processed.
I think previous is
that is
okay.
being done. That is in the current MR that I just reviewed from Alvin, that is adding the current, or like this month to date, is also adding previous month.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
I
So
think from a
sorry, go ahead.
I was only going to say, I think from a technical perspective, I think the difficulty is with the current GraphQL API only does per month basis, not so you basically have to run 12 individual queries, which is where the conversation around iteration 2 and yearlies or longer periods starts coming to effect.
Can we roll up usage by year for later display?
Technically, yeah. It's a similar process to what we're doing with sessions, having an aggregated merge tree. I learned a new word the last couple of weeks, which basically just asynchronously bundles and segment and groups the same thing in together and sums it all up for you. So yes, that is definitely something we could look at doing, but that's a back-end task that would need to be discussed with Max or Hello.
For now, I think we're on a good track. I think that's showing because we have 0 months of data. So we have some time built in to figure out how do we show more than 12 months worth of data and see how expensive the queries are and what the user experience would be waiting for those things to come back if we even retain the data that long. So there's some outstanding questions, I think, here that I'm going to get added. Which do we have assumptions made? Open questions. Is data changed to another product question? Like start. Is it unique? Is it the same for all users? Or those are things that we'll need to sort out with revenue, which will influence then our implementation. So I think that I'll check in with Elwin and see what kind of assumptions he's made. It looks like it's month by month, and see if we can do the same thing on the billing side, or if we're going to need to shift. For now, month by month, when we're not billing, we'll be just fine, and then we'll figure it out from there. That seem reasonable? Not ideal, but reasonable. Cool. All right. Jumping back into the agenda, review any upcoming design issues for what's in the next milestone. Looks like we have one issue assigned into 16.6, adding the product analytics usage visualization to show total usage. After that, everything is in backlog. We have, so it looks like we need to find some issues to assign into 16.7 for front end. Or do we have everything that is, sorry, front end probably has work assigned. Do we have things that need design for 16.7 or that we should start thinking about for 16.8 that are in this list based on the themes and the objectives and those milestones? And I can do that legwork to get ready for next week and say, hey, here are the things I think we need to pay attention to in the coming weeks so that we're ready for 16.8 when it kicks off.
Nothing from the top of my head. I will say that with usage quota, I feel like we're pretty lucky that we're not building something new. So during the review, we've been able to use the existing screens and just try and stay consistent with them for now, not reinvent the wheel. We can always come back and iterate on that. So I think that means, at least from the work that I'm working on, and I think that Alvin has planned for like the next milestone or two, there's not really much that we, I think, need in terms of design that I can think of off the top of my head.
For me, the only thing other than like minor UX, really low priority bug fixes, like differentiating single stat empty state from having nothing, no data, and 0%, because it all reverts to 0. The only big thing is what we were just discussing at the top of the call around feedback and that UX flow, and figuring out the least annoying and obtrusive way of getting that without, while also still getting a return on our efforts, essentially.
Yeah.
So that is I guess the not necessarily big, but the one that's going to require some thought, for me at least.
Yeah.
So all the other stuff that we've been doing, we're pretty much at the point now where we can start rolling out flags, aren't we? Visualization designer, dashboard designer, even usage metrics, I expect to have a real big impact, like be mostly, if not all, done by the end of 16.6, which objectives wise is we're on track front end wise. So we start moving into what next territory at that point.
Recently wanted to give feedback on the AI experiment, and I feel like the flow was pretty natural, where it went from learn more, which I knew was going to take me to the documentation, because I wanted to see, okay, what is the feature plan currently? And then there was a very helpful link to say, have feedback. Here's a link to our issues, or like create issue. And from there, I could find like, oh, there was already existing issue for this. I think as a first iteration, that's something we can do to get feedback. I feel like it's a pretty natural flow from, this is strange, let me go and check out the documentation. Okay, this is still strange, let me create an issue.
Yeah. So we have the feedback issue linked in the docs already. But the more places we can stick it in the flow, I think makes sense to try to collect additional info. Cool. Glad that model worked, and that'll be something that we can copy. All right. Jan, I think you have the next agenda item then.
Yes. So this is more of a heads up. I don't think it needs anything that we need to do right now. We can leave it as an action item to sync up again next week. I just want to make sure that everyone on this call is aware that Optimize is proposing some new designs and layout improvements that's going to impact all customizable dashboards, not just analytics, specifically stuff like panel level filtering, which is something we discussed about a year ago, and we've kind of just swept that under the carpet, because that is quite a difficult problem to solve actually once you start getting into hierarchy of filters and priorities and overriding and all that stuff, and like how to visually communicate that, what do we limit, etc. So I've provided some initial feedback on the design proposal, and I think it would be good for everyone here to just go check it out. And if you have any comments, please leave them there. But it is, in general, it's exciting to see that it's moving beyond our group, and it's becoming like a wider GitLab thing to work on dashboards now.
They have a dedicated designer, don't they? Optimize, yeah.
Correct.
So from my point of view, I am more than happy for them to do the really hard UX legwork regarding figuring all this out. As long as it matches the custom dashboards guidelines that are in pajamas, and we're aware of any discussions around the schema definitions to make sure that it makes sense. I don't want to be in any way a blocker to their progress, because we can piggyback off their progress in our own work. We just may have to make adaptations or propose changes based upon limitations with the technology stack we're using in terms of Cube.
Yeah.
So, but we may not know about that tool after the fact when we actually start deep diving ourselves. Iteration is fun.
I think we need to make sure we're thinking about not only how is this going to work for optimized dashboards and product analytics dashboards, but the rest of the dashboards within GitLab. And we may end up with a not as nice use case for ourselves, but one that works more broadly with the rest of the data across the org as they start to migrate into schema-defined dashboards and being able to create and pull data into a dashboard from multiple areas, like a threat insights or a compliance thing in where you want to filter by group that applies to all the visualizations or some of the visualizations. How does that work? Because you could filter by visualization or across the entire dashboard. And how's that going to work? Front end and back end, user experience, and technically both. I think we should start thinking about that and what we want that experience to look like. So this is a good way to kick off that conversation. Don't want to slow them down, but want to make sure that we don't build ourselves into a corner where we can't do more powerful things because we built for one use case.
Yeah, I think as long as we keep it to two-way door decisions, make it cheap and easy to change our minds, then I'm fine with us experimenting in any way here.
And this is exactly what we did with the first round of schema definitions and working with Optimize to adapt it to match their use cases too. So yeah, I much rather they do the really hard UX conversation. The two hardest things of this is going to be the UX flow and inheritance. So same with compliance. When we were working in compliance, inheritance was a real pain trying to figure that out. So if they're doing a lot of that legwork and we're just coming in making sure that it's not just hyper narrowed too much, then I'm more than happy to not have to think about it so deep right now, at least.
Cool. All right, well, that gets us to the end of the agenda, I think, then. Any other last minute show and tell or discussion items?
I just wanted to look back to that first agenda item. Sorry for joining the call 5 minutes late.
No problem.
The feedback, I just went and checked we do have, you're right, on product analytics documentation, a link to comment on an issue, but I see it's not on analytics dashboards, which I think, yeah, that's usually the one I go to more often because that is like the thing I feel like most people will be interacting with, whereas product analytics is, very specific to the like setting up the stack and like the connection details. Once you start actually using dashboards, I feel like you're more likely to land on analytics dashboards.
Okay. Let's go open an MR to add it there as well then.
Should we make analytics dashboards, that documentation page is meant to be a bit more generic? I know we currently own it, and we just had a conversation about other people starting to contribute and join in. I don't know if the feedback issue should be the same for both, or just update the title of the feedback issue to be a bit less product analytics specific, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, it could maybe be a separate issue. You're right. But also to start out with, if we just have it as ours, I think that would also be fine, because it seems like Optimize is going to hide value stream dashboard for behind a feature flag for a first iteration. So that means once we ship, it should only be product analytics.
And you're talking about on this page specifically?
Correct.
Yeah, I can add something here so that we can say product analytics. I'll also add the beta tag here, or experiment tag, that it's an experiment. It's an ultimate only feature. And if you have feedback on our first iteration, to leave it here and then link to the same issue.
Yeah, that
I'll
works for
tag
me.
you both into that MR once I get it open, as well as Lorena, and we can iterate within that. If that works for you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. All right. All right, with that, I think we'll call it a call then, and I'll get it uploaded to YouTube for everyone else. Thanks, y'all. Have a great day.